Amara was the kind of woman who turned heads wherever she went, but it wasn't just her features that drew people in. She had a gentle spirit and a keen intellect that made everyone around her feel seen and valued. With an elegant grace, she navigated life's many challenges, balancing ambition with compassion. Growing up in a tight-knit family, she was taught from an early age that integrity mattered more than appearances. Her parents, both teachers, had instilled in her a sense of self-respect and had encouraged her to high standards for the love she allowed into her life. Even with her values and self-assurance, Amara sometimes felt the weight of societal pressures. She was in her late 20s now, and many of her friends were getting engaged, married, or starting families. She found herself yearning for a partner with whom she could share the same level of trust and intimacy she witnessed in her parents' loving relationship. She wasn't desperate, but she was open to genuine connection if it presented itself. On a balmy evening, her friend Chioma hosted a get-together, a casual gathering of colleagues, neighbors, and old acquaintances. Amara rarely went out to large social events, preferring smaller dinner parties, yet Chioma had convinced her that it would be a great opportunity to meet new people. That's where she encountered Tunde. From the moment he introduced himself, Tunde exuded confidence. He was tall, well-spoken. When he smiled, there was a spark in his eyes that suggested warmth and intelligence. In conversation, Tunde was captivating. He spoke of his entrepreneurial ventures. He owned a successful tech startup, traveled extensively for business, and seemed passionate about innovation. He listened attentively when Amara spoke about her volunteer work at a local literacy program. He asked thoughtful questions and joked that he would love to donate some of his company's tablets to support her cause. Amara was intrigued by his blend of charm and apparent generosity. Over the following weeks, their connection deepened. Tunde would take Amara to art galleries, fancy restaurants, and music concerts. He filled her phone with sweet messages, voice notes of him humming love songs, and photos of picturesque sunset views he claimed reminded him of her. When they walked together, he often slipped his hand gently around her waist as if to shield her from the bustle of the city. Amara felt special, and despite her cautious nature, she allowed herself to believe that Tunde might truly be the one. After about 3 months of dating, Tunde started making comments about our future. He would casually mention how their children would have her eyes and his sense of humor, or how he couldn't wait for her to meet his big family someday when the time was right. At a weekend brunch, he introduced her to 2 of his friends as the woman I'm serious about. Amara appreciated his openness, believing it meant he was intent on building a real partnership. Little did she know there was a massive secret looming in the shadows, one that would shatter her trust in him. Late one night, when Amara was getting ready for bed, a notification blinked on her phone. It was a private message on social media from a woman named Aisha, accompanied by several photos. The message read, "I'm Tunde's wife. I don't know who you are, but please stop seeing my husband." Disbelief washed over Amara. Her heart pounded and her hands trembled as she stared at photos of Tunde dressed in traditional attire, exchanging vows with Aisha. The pictures were unmistakable. Tunde had a wife, and there were even images of him holding a small child, presumably his daughter. Amara didn't sleep that night. She tossed and turned, going through every conversation she'd ever had with Tunde, every moment they shared. How could he have deceived her so skillfully? He had never hinted at an existing marriage or a child. Her anger and sadness mingled with a deep sense of betrayal. By morning, she felt resolute. She deserved answers, and if the truth was what it seemed, she would walk away without looking back. The next day, she confronted Tunde. They met at a quiet cafe, and the moment he saw her face, his confident demeanor faltered. He tried to speak first, but Amara cut him off, her voice steady though her eyes were moist. She told him about the message from Aisha, about the pictures, about the child. Tunde swallowed hard and began explaining himself in halting phrases, admitting he was still legally married, but claiming the relationship had grown complicated. He insisted he loved Amara, that she was the one who truly made him happy. But every word that fell from his lips felt hollow. The bitterness of betrayal stung in her throat, but she did not waver. "Don't ever contact me again," she said firmly, tears finally breaking free. Then she walked out, leaving Tunde alone with the remnants of his lies. Though her heart felt like it was splintering into 1,000 pieces, she knew she'd made the right choice. For a while, Amara threw herself into her work and her volunteer projects, each day challenging herself to find meaning and solace in helping others. She was determined not to let Tunde's deceit define her or shape her future relationships. In this season of healing, she focused on her personal growth, enrolling in online courses, taking up yoga, and reading books on self-discovery and emotional well-being. She learned to process her grief and reminded herself that his betrayal had nothing to do with her worth. Life has its own sense of timing, and the world often opens unexpected doors when you're truly ready for them. One warm afternoon, Amara was taking a leisurely stroll with her dog, a small energetic spaniel named Coco. As she tried to calm Coco, who was excited by the sight of a stray cat, she bumped into a man holding a bag of groceries. Some of the apples in his paper bag tumbled to the ground, rolling away in different directions. "Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry," Amara exclaimed, kneeling down to pick up the runaway fruit. The man laughed kindly. "It's all right. I'd rather lose a few apples than never meet you," he said, extending a hand. "I'm Dapo." There was a warmth in Dapo's voice and a sincerity in his eyes that put Amara immediately at ease. Where Tunde had been flashy and grandiose, Dapo seemed relaxed, genuine, and down to earth. He told her he worked as an architect at a local firm and was on his way home to try out a new apple pie recipe he'd found online. Amara found herself smiling at his gentle, unassuming nature. They began running into each other more frequently, sometimes by chance at the grocery store or local park, and other times by plan, each texting the other to meet for coffee or a quick lunch. Dapo was patient, never pushing Amara to share more than she was ready to, but he listened attentively whenever she opened up about her past. He laughed at her jokes, showed genuine interest in her volunteer initiatives, and was quick to share stories about his own close-knit family in a way that felt honest and warm. Over the next year, their relationship blossomed into something steady and beautiful. Dapo introduced Amara to his parents and siblings. She spent time with them, cooking together and swapping stories, marveling at how comfortable she felt in their presence. This was so different from the uncertain, flashy life she had experienced with Tunde. Dapo's world felt stable, loving, and free of pretenses. One late afternoon, under the huge mango tree where they had first run into each other with the apples, Dapo knelt down on one knee. He held a small velvet box in his hand, his voice trembling slightly as he asked Amara to be his wife. Tears gathered at the corners of her eyes, not from sadness this time, but from a fullness of joy she hadn't dared to hope for. She said yes, and their laughter echoed among the leaves. Their wedding was a simple yet elegant affair. Amara wore a gown that shimmered like morning dew, and Dapo stood at the altar with an expression of absolute devotion. As they exchanged vows, Amara felt overwhelmed by the journey she had taken. She'd experienced betrayal and heartbreak, but she had chosen to believe in her own worth. Stepping away from Tunde had been agonizing, yet it was a necessary act of self-preservation. In the glow of the celebration, Amara looked into Dapo's eyes, reminded of all the lessons she had learned, that real love holds truth above all else, that respect never leaves you guessing, and that true partners lift each other up rather than tear each other down. As the evening sun cast a golden light on the newlyweds, the festivities carried on with music, laughter, and the promise of a bright future. Amara's story is a testament to finding one's own strength in the face of deception. By valuing her dignity and refusing to settle for less than honesty, she opened her heart to a love that was genuine and whole. In the end, the most beautiful truth she discovered was that every heartbreak can eventually lead to a far greater joy, if only one remains steadfast in self-respect and hope.